Welcome to News Edge, your sharpest source for daily headlines and deep dives. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay ahead of the curve. Tonight, we're diving into a story with massive implications for the global economy and your wallet. The headlines may seem distant, but the ripple effects could reach every household, every business, and every corner of the world. A major economic conflict is brewing between the United States and the BRICS nations, a coalition of emerging economies that's gaining momentum and challenging the status quo. Former President Donald Trump, now a presidential candidate, has threatened a 100% tariff on all goods from BRICS if they launch a new currency to challenge the US dollar. This bold move is sending shockwaves through financial markets and diplomatic circles alike. This isn't just political posturing, it's a direct threat that could trigger an unprecedented economic showdown, with consequences that could reshape global alliances and trade patterns for years to come. The stakes are enormous. This is about power, influence, and the future of the international financial system. The outcome could determine which nations set the rules for global commerce. Such a tariff would send a clear message. Any attempt to dethrone the dollar will be met with severe economic force. The world is watching how the US will defend its currency's dominance. For Americans, this could mean higher prices at the checkout, shortages of everyday products, and disrupted supply chains that impact jobs and businesses across the country. For the world, a period of economic instability, market volatility, and uncertainty about the future of international trade. We'll break down who the BRICS nations are, why the dollar matters so much in global trade, and what's at stake if a new currency emerges to rival it, and we'll explore what could happen if this threat becomes reality, how businesses, investors, and everyday people might be affected. We'll also look at how Canada and Mexico, America's closest trading partners, are being pulled into this widening dispute, and what it could mean for North American economies. This is a potential economic earthquake, and understanding the fault lines is crucial to preparing for what comes next. The world is watching to see if this leads to a devastating trade war, a dramatic shift in global power, or the birth of a new economic order. Stay tuned as we unravel the story behind the headlines. Who exactly are the BRICS nations, and why are they making headlines around the world? Originally, BRICS referred to Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. 5 rapidly developing economies that have been steadily gaining global influence over the past 2 decades. Recently, the group expanded to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, transforming BRICS into a true global heavyweight with even greater reach and diversity. Together, these nations now represent nearly half the world's population and control vast reserves of energy and natural resources, making their collective voice impossible to ignore. Their main goal is to create a multipolar world, one where power isn't concentrated solely in the West, but is more evenly distributed across regions. The BRICS bloc is determined to reduce dependence on the US dollar, especially after recent Western sanctions on Russia highlighted the risks and vulnerabilities of the current dollar-dominated system. In response, they're accelerating plans for their own payment systems and even exploring the possibility of a shared currency, aiming to create financial networks shielded from US influence. This ambitious push for de-dollarization is now at the heart of current global economic tensions, challenging the status quo. By banding together, BRICS aims to build an alternative financial system that empowers the global South and offers new opportunities for developing nations. Institutions like the New Development Bank are already challenging the dominance of the World Bank and IMF, providing new funding options and reshaping global finance. As BRICS nations coordinate more closely, their currency ambitions are becoming a credible threat to the established order, prompting a strong and watchful response from the United States and its allies. Why does the BRICS currency plan alarm Washington? The answer lies in the extraordinary influence of the US dollar on the world stage. It's all about the US dollar's unique global role. The dollar isn't just America's currency, it's the backbone of the international financial system. For decades, the dollar has been the world's primary reserve currency. Central banks everywhere hold it, and most global trade is done in dollars. Oil, commodities, and even debt are priced in dollars, making it the default language of global commerce. This dominance gives the US huge economic and political power, letting it borrow cheaply and run large deficits. The world's demand for dollars means the US can finance its spending at lower costs than any other nation. The US can also use its financial system to impose powerful sanctions, cutting off adversaries from global markets. This ability to control access to the dollar-based system is a potent tool in international diplomacy and conflict. The dollar's stability and trust are unmatched, making it hard for any new currency to compete. Investors and governments alike see the dollar as a safe haven in times of crisis, reinforcing its dominance. While the euro, yen, and yuan are used internationally, none rival the dollar's supremacy. These currencies lack the deep, liquid markets and global trust that the dollar commands. Replacing the dollar is a monumental challenge for BRICS, but even the attempt is taken seriously in Washington. The mere possibility of a rival currency signals a shift in global power dynamics. Any shift away from the dollar would erode US influence and economic advantages. It could reshape alliances, trade relationships, and the balance of power worldwide. It would make US debt more expensive and weaken sanctions as a foreign policy tool. The US would lose its unique ability to project power through finance. That's why the BRICS challenge is seen as a direct threat to American power. The stakes are not just economic, they're deeply strategic. The fight to protect the dollar is about preserving a core pillar of US dominance. Losing this edge would fundamentally alter America's role in the world. This is more than economics. It's about national security and global leadership. The future of the dollar will shape the future of American power for generations to come. The 100% tariff threat is a direct extension of Trump's America First economic philosophy. This approach sees trade as a zero-sum game, where BRICS' currency ambitions are viewed as an attack on US sovereignty. The tariffs are meant as a powerful warning: challenge the dollar, and you'll face economic isolation. This strategy uses America's massive consumer market as leverage, aiming to force other countries to change course. The message to BRICS is blunt: abandon your plans or lose access to the world's largest economy. Proponents argue tariffs correct decades of unfair trade and bring jobs back to the US. It's a nationalist vision, prioritizing domestic interests over global integration. This marks a sharp break from traditional US trade policy, favoring confrontation over cooperation. The tariff threat sets the stage for a clash of economic ideologies that could define global relations for years. If the US actually imposes 100% tariffs on BRICS goods, the fallout would be immediate and severe. American consumers would see prices on everything from electronics to clothing skyrocket. Inflation would surge, hitting lower-income families hardest. US businesses, reliant on global supply chains, would face soaring costs and lost competitiveness. Some companies might close, leading to job losses and reduced investment. For BRICS nations, losing access to the US market would be a devastating blow, especially for export-driven economies like China. Factories could shut down, causing mass layoffs and social unrest. The damage wouldn't stop there. A trade war would send shockwaves through the global economy, disrupting supply chains and financial markets. Other countries would be caught in the crossfire, risking a global recession. The cost of such a conflict would be measured in trillions, with pain felt worldwide. The trade conflict isn't just about distant nations, it's hitting America's closest neighbors. Trump has threatened a 25% tariff on all goods from Canada and Mexico, America's top trading partners. This would effectively tear up the USMCA, disrupting decades of cross-border cooperation. The tariffs are tied to issues like border security and immigration, turning trade policy into a political weapon. North American supply chains would be thrown into chaos, making products more expensive and less competitive. Canada and Mexico would likely retaliate, targeting key US exports and sparking a damaging trade war. The result: job losses, strained alliances, and deep economic uncertainty across the continent. This move risks destabilizing the very partnership that has fueled North American prosperity. Tariff threats against BRICS, Canada, and Mexico raise the specter of a global trade war. This wouldn't be fought with weapons, but with taxes and restrictions on goods. Retaliation would spiral, disrupting global supply chains and driving up costs for everyone. US companies would scramble to find new suppliers, leading to delays and higher prices. Consumers would feel the pinch as tariffs act like a tax on imported goods. American exports would suffer abroad, hurting farmers and manufacturers. The result: rising inflation, job losses, and eroded trust among nations. Globalization would retreat, replaced by rival economic blocs and protectionism. The world would become more fragmented, making it harder to tackle shared challenges. At the heart of this conflict is a question: will the US dollar remain king, or are we entering a multi-currency world? The BRICS push for an alternative currency is the biggest challenge to dollar dominance in decades. Creating a stable, trusted new currency is a massive task, requiring unprecedented cooperation among diverse BRICS members. The dollar's head start and deep financial markets make it hard to displace. Still, de-dollarization is gaining momentum. Trade in other currencies is already rising. BRICS could develop payment systems to bypass the dollar, fragmenting global finance. For the US, this means losing some of its exorbitant privilege and weakening its sanctions power. For others, it offers more choice, but also more complexity and risk. The tariff confrontation is a battle over which future will prevail: US dominance or a multipolar order. The outcome will shape the global economy for decades. We're at a crossroads for the world economy. The threatened tariffs signal a possible shift from decades of integration to a future of conflict and fragmentation. The dollar's dominance is at the center, forcing nations to reconsider their place in a changing order. Aggressive tariffs could backfire, accelerating the very trends they aim to stop. A trade war could push BRICS closer together, isolating the US as new blocs form. For the world, this moment is both perilous and full of opportunity. A global trade war would slow growth, but the challenge to the dollar also reflects a real desire for a fairer system. This confrontation may force overdue reforms in global financial institutions. Ultimately, we face a choice: protectionism and conflict, or a new consensus that balances competition with cooperation. The decisions made now will shape the foundations of the global economy for a generation.